Hey, and welcome. So, today we're going to dive into this really fascinating text from the 19th century. It's called the Shikshaptri. And it tackles one of the biggest human quests out there, the search for real, lasting happiness. What's cool is it offers a surprisingly practical blueprint for a happier life. So, let's get into it. It's the big question, right? Where does true happiness actually come from? In a world that's just packed with endless distractions and quick fixes, we're all chasing after it. But where do we find the real deal? Well, this ancient text starts by acknowledging this exact problem, a problem that feels superhuman and honestly really modern. All right, so let's get right into our first section, the foundation of happiness. Now, what's interesting is the Shikshapatri doesn't start with a bunch of complicated rules. Nope, it kicks things off with a really simple but profound truth, this universal desire that connects every single one of us. Yeah, the text just gets straight to the point. It says that in this world, all living beings want happiness. Nobody wants to be sad. And okay, maybe that's not some huge revolutionary idea, but it is the absolute bedrock of everything that comes next. It's like the scripture is saying, hey, I get it. I see you. I know exactly what you're looking for. So here's the thing. If we all want to be happy, why is it so hard to find? Well, according to the commentary on this text, it's because we're usually digging in the wrong spot. We think happiness is all about protecting our money, our family, or our status in the world. But the scripture is really clear on this. That's not where you're going to find the real source of it. Instead, the text points to this one thing as the real source, dharma. Now, it's super important to understand what this means in this context. It's not just about, religious duty. The source defines it way more simply. It's just righteous conduct, living a principled life. And that, it claims, is the one true foundation for genuine, lasting happiness. Okay, so if dharma is the key, how do we actually learn to live that way? Well, that brings us right to our next section, where the text introduces itself as a guidebook for all. And this is a really, really important point. This scripture flat out says it was written for the welfare of all beings. Think about that. It's basically an open invitation. It's meant to help anyone who decides to engage with its principles, no matter who you are or where you come from. But, it's one thing to have a guidebook, and it's a whole other thing to actually absorb what it's trying to teach you, right? So how do you do it? Well, the text gives a very specific technique for exactly how to approach it. So it's this three-step process. And it really highlights a universal truth about learning anything. The source puts a huge emphasis on engaging with a focused mind, or what it calls ekagraman. And the commentary uses a perfect analogy for this. Think about it. Has anyone ever asked you if you saw something and you had to say, oh, sorry, my mind was somewhere else? The text says it's the exact same principle. You can physically read the words on a page, but if your mind is wandering, it's like you never even read them. That focus, that's the key. Okay. So once we're actually engaged with that focused mind, the guide presents us with a super clear choice. It's like a literal fork in the road, and each path leads to a completely different destination. So here they are, the two paths. On one side, you've got sadachar, that's righteous conduct. Basically, it means you're consciously choosing to live by the principles laid out in this guide. And on the other side, you've got swear, which is acting on self-will. This is pretty much doing whatever you feel like, whenever you feel like it, with absolutely no guiding principles. And the text is crystal clear about where each path leads. The path of principle, that leads to mahasukha, which means great lasting happiness. But the path of just doing whatever you want, that leads directly to mahakasht, great suffering. It really doesn't mince words here. The consequences are huge and totally different. And this isn't just an isolated idea. The commentary actually brings in this really powerful quote from the Bhagavad Gita that reinforces the exact same point. If you just act on your own whims, without any kind of guiding framework, you end up moving away from both happiness and fulfillment. To really drive this point home, the source tells the story of a man named Ajamila. You can think of him as a case study. He totally ignored the scriptures, lived a life that was driven purely by his own selfish desires. And what happened? As a result, he faced just immense fear and suffering at the end of his life. It's a powerful cautionary tale about the real-world consequences of choosing that path of self-will. So, okay, we have the path, and we know the destination. But what's the final piece of this puzzle? Well, it turns out it's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it. It all comes down to your mindset. And this is such a critical distinction. It's all about our motivation. Are we following this path out of buy, which is fear? The source compares this to like obeying a judge just so you don't get punished. It's forced, it's reluctant. Or are we following it with priti, that's love and enthusiasm, because we genuinely believe it leads to that mahasukha, that great happiness? You can see the difference, right? One feels like a burden and the other is a total joy. All right, let's bring this all together in our final section, the path to lasting joy. So what's the big takeaway here? What's the actual actionable advice this text gives us for finding that happiness in our own lives? It really boils down to this simple 3-part formula. First, act with love, priti, not with fear. Second, be constantly vigilant or savdhan. The source warns that if we're not paying attention, our senses can easily pull us off track. And third, you have to follow this path continuously, nirantar. This isn't a one-and-done kind of thing. It's a constant, mindful practice. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. This ancient wisdom isn't just some abstract theory. It's meant to be a practical guide for right now, for today. So just think about your own life for a second. What is one small daily action that you could shift? Something that maybe feels like a chore you do out of obligation? How could you approach that one thing with more love, more awareness, and more vigilance? It's definitely something to think about.